So what is it like to be a forensic psychologist? I am so lucky to have the job that I do because I absolutely love it. And with forensic psychology, we can work in so many different areas. Generally, obviously, everything that has some sort of forensic element. So that could be in prisons, secure hospitals, children's homes, probation. There are loads of different areas that you can work in as long as they have that sort of forensic element. And as a forensic psychologist, I do so many different things. So I do assessments, so that would mean when I assess people, and that is generally, we can do a clinical interview, which is an interview that helps you really to understand that individual, what has led them on the path where they are now. And that is really just asking some really open-ended questions and being able to speak to the individual and to find out potentially what led them to offend in the first place, and really trying to unpack that for them. And within that, obviously, you have to try and build trust with the client, which can be really difficult for clients who maybe haven't had good experience with the professionals before, or that just may find it really difficult to trust, and particularly if the individual has mental health difficulties as well. You have to really be able to understand all the different types of disorders and presentations that you may come into contact with, and you have to obviously take that into account, and that can be part of your assessment as well. So really answering those questions, really understanding that client. And you may use psychometrics, which are questionnaires which are designed to look for certain things. So it could be for anxiety, it could be for low self-esteem, and it could be even for malingering, so looking at if people maybe are trying to skew the results of the interview in a way that they see fit. And when we look at the assessments as well, we do structured risk assessments. So that could be looking at someone's risk of violence, it could be looking at their risk of sexual violence, it could be looking at stalking, it could be looking at fire setting, a range of different offences or kind of a behaviour that could be seen as a risk. And within that, you should also look for protective factors. So they are things that are going to help to lower that risk. So you always want to balance it out. You never want to be someone that would just look for the risk and just say, okay, this person is really risky, this is what's going to make them offend, this is what's going to make them behave violently or something. You want to be able to say, okay, this is what makes someone behave violently, but this could be what could stop them behaving violently. So you always want to do a protective factors assessment as well. And they're kind of the assessment style of things that you would do. So you look at a clinical interview, and then you look at some sort of structured assessments. And you may want to assess for personality disorder or psychopathy as well. And they're more the diagnostic assessments. So that would be where you would spend time with an individual talking about the personality, the different traits, their behaviours, and that would allow you to diagnose a particular personality disorder, or as I said, psychopathy. And that could also looking at the diagnostic assessments, as I mentioned, the psychometrics. So you may be looking at trauma. So you may do a trauma interview, you may do a trauma assessment, and you may use psychometrics. So they are kind of the areas that you would use for more diagnoses, and they obviously play a part in the whole assessment. So that is really in a tiny nutshell how assessment works. And then we do formulations. So formulations are something that, if you know me, you know I love. They are a way of looking at someone beyond the diagnosis, beyond any sort of label that is placed on them of an offender, of someone with a personality disorder, someone who experiences anxiety. And they are all the different ways that you can really understand a person, understand them for them, understand what makes them tick, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel not so good, what's made them offend, what's made them not offend. Really understanding them as a whole. Yes, within that you may look at personality traits, you may look at trauma history, but it is seeing a person beyond what is on the paper. And that's why I love them, because I think that they are just a way of seeing someone that potentially that they haven't been seen in before, and just a way of helping that person understand it as well as others understand them. And within that, with forensic psychology, we do a lot of consultations. So we work with other professionals to either share our findings of an individual from the assessment, help people understand them, and that could be different professionals that are working with an individual, whether that is probation, whether that is their prison officer or their key worker in prison, or their nurse in a hospital or a secure setting. So it can be a wider range of professionals that you would work in to help this person to get back to living a life that they want without offending. So that is kind of the consultation process. In terms of treatment, forensic psychologists can be involved in loads of different types of treatment. I am a CBT therapist as well, so obviously I can offer CBT therapy to the individuals that I work with, but you can also do offender management programs, where you would look at reducing a particular offence type or offending pattern. It could be that you would do a program to reduce violence, to help them to understand themselves, whether that is their disorder or their offending, and you may want to do things to help them manage their emotions. So it can be quite short-term programs, it can be longer-term programs. I've been in a program that ran for 18 months. So it was a really intense program, but it was to help people with personality difficulties to be able to manage their problematic personality traits, and that was amazing, and it was really, really effective. So different psychologists, depending on the service that you work in, do different types of treatment. And within the assessment and the treatment comes reports. Forensic psychologists love a report. We write a lot of them, whether, as I said, it comes from all of the assessments that you do, so that's the clinical interview, the risk assessments, the diagnostic assessments, the formulations, just really kind of understanding that individual, and then you would write a report on it. You would write reports post-treatment, during treatment, and then you may write reports for parole boards. So you may be called in to assess an individual and write a report for a parole. So whether that will be kind of just really explaining that individual from a better perspective and giving some advice on what you think would be helpful for them. So within that, report writing takes a lot of time. It's something that you have to make sure is to a really high standard that can be understood by a range of individuals as well. You don't want to write it so it's just understood by professionals. It needs to be understood by family, by the individual themselves, and so yeah, that's kind of something that is super a major part of being a forensic psychologist. And research, getting involved in evidence-based practice, so really kind of delving in and adding to the research. So that could be, you could do service evaluations where you would look at the service that you work in, or potentially another service that you've been called in to look at. You can do audits to kind of make sure that things are running how they should be against kind of some sort of checklist, or kind of a wider research, whether that's qualitative or quantitative. We often get involved in larger research projects or research within the service that you work in. So there are loads of different areas, and supervision is an area where you obviously receive supervision from someone who is more qualified than you, but also you would give supervision. So you'd supervise individuals who you are their supervisor, so generally people who are less experienced in a particular area than you, and you would meet with them regularly, either weekly, every other week, or monthly, and you would work through different models to really help them to improve their skills and their practice as well. And also reflective practice, so that is where you support other people to reflect on their service that they're in, or a situation that they're in. It could be after an incident, it could be just general reflective practice to give staff a space just to reflect on how they're feeling. So we work a lot with, as I said, the supervision and the reflective practice, and that could be sometimes containing people, and even for people going through difficult times. There's a lot of stress in the field that we work in often, so it's sometimes we provide support to help people to manage their stress, or really give them good coping skills and strategies that they can use in the workplace as well. And I think they are there's probably a lot more areas, but I don't want this video to go on for ages. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what it is like to be a forensic psychologist and the different things that we do. If you do have any particular questions about what it's like to be a forensic psychologist, then please drop it in the comments, and I hope you found this helpful.